He pushed his baby girl off a 37th floor balcony, thinking no one would ever know. But what he didn't see was the black horse beneath, who caught her in the most miraculous way. 15 years later, she returns, not for revenge, but for truth, and the world watches. The baby's cry echoed through the cold marble halls of the Tressington estate, raw, desperate, and unnoticed. On the 37th floor of a luxury high-rise wrapped in glass and power, billionaire Gregory Tressington stood at the edge of his penthouse balcony. In his arms, wrapped in a pink blanket stitched with tiny suns and stars, was his daughter, Sarah. She was only 11 months old. The sky was gray. The wind howled. But his heart was colder than both. "She was never supposed to be born," he muttered, the bitterness in his voice thicker than the clouds rolling in. "Not like this. Not broken." Behind closed doors, whispers about Sarah had never made it to the press. Gregory's spotless public image, a philanthropic genius, a tech visionary, couldn't allow it. His daughter had a rare neurodevelopmental disorder. The doctors used words like delayed response, low motor tone, impaired sensory function. Gregory only heard one word: defective. And Gregory didn't tolerate imperfection. He looked down. The drop below was certain death. No one could see him here. No one except the black stallion. From the far corner of the property, beyond the manicured garden and bronze fountains, a majestic Frisian stallion stood in the mist. His name was Valor. He had been Gregory's prized show horse until the tycoon lost interest. Now, he was a forgotten creature in a forgotten stable, but his eyes burned with quiet intelligence. Valor watched as Gregory stepped forward, his baby daughter squirming lightly, still oblivious to fate. "I'm sorry," Gregory whispered, not to the child, but to himself. And then he let go. But fate had other plans. As the pink bundle fell, a flash of black shot through the lawn like lightning. Hooves pounded the earth. Valor galloped harder than ever before, leapt through the hedges, and positioned himself beneath the falling child with a precision no one could have imagined. The baby landed not on cold stone but against his thick mane, cradled between his shoulders and the leather harness still strapped across his back from forgotten rides. She was alive. Stunned but safe. Valor didn't stop. He kept running straight out of the estate, through the iron gates Gregory had foolishly left open during renovations. He didn't look back. Neither did Gregory. He didn't even realize the child survived. He turned, walked back into his sterile empire of lies, and poured himself a drink. He thought it was done. It had only begun. 15 years passed. In a small mountain town far from the glitter of the city, a girl named Sarah lived quietly with an old stable hand named Marla. Sarah had grown into a bright, soft-spoken teenager with a slight limp in her left leg, but her mind was sharp, eyes clearer than any mirror, and her bond with Valor was something of legend in their community. Sarah didn't know who she was. Marla had told her she was orphaned. Abandoned on the steps of an animal shelter one stormy night. And the horse, the black stallion that had brought her there, soaked and shivering, was said to have stood guard all night until the door opened. They were meant for each other, Marla always said. But things were changing. The town's only stable, Marla's, was being bought out by a corporation that claimed to be building eco-resorts for the elite. Their logo? A sharp, angular silver T. Tressington Corp. One morning, as Sarah swept the stalls, she found Valor standing still, nostrils flared, eyes fixed on a sleek black car parked outside. The man who stepped out wore a dark tailored coat and expensive shoes. His assistant trailed behind him with a tablet and a plastic smile. Gregory Tressington hadn't aged well. But he was still sharp. Still dangerous. He didn't recognize the girl sweeping hay nearby. Not yet. But Valor did. His body stiffened. His ears pinned back. His breath grew heavy. And when Gregory stepped closer to the stable door, Valor let out a long, low whinny, like a warning carved in thunder. Gregory froze. Something about that sound, it scraped the edges of a memory he had buried long ago. "What's wrong with that horse?" the assistant asked, frowning. Gregory didn't answer. Sarah turned around, unaware that she was standing 3 feet from the man who had once tried to end her life. Their eyes met. Nothing in her expression betrayed the storm she was about to unleash. That night, Valor wouldn't sleep. He paced. He stared at the gates. Then he walked to the small drawer in Marla's office where she kept old things, ribbons, medical papers, a faded pink blanket. The one with tiny suns and stars. Sarah stared at it in confusion. Then she noticed something else, a tiny tag, almost worn off, Tressington Private Hospital, room 318. Her heart skipped. She looked at Marla, who finally lowered her head. "It's time," Marla whispered. And just like that, the first thread of truth unraveled. Sarah wasn't nobody. She was someone. Someone unwanted. Someone lost. And maybe, someone powerful enough to bring a billionaire to his knees. The next morning, the sun peeked over the hills like it was afraid of what the day might bring. Sarah hadn't slept. She sat in the hayloft, her knees pulled to her chest, the faded blanket clutched in her arms. Valor stood below, watching her, his head tilted with quiet sadness. She had always known there were missing pieces in her life. But now she realized, it wasn't that the puzzle was incomplete. It was that someone had thrown away half the box. Tressington, she whispered to herself, tasting the name like it was poison. She didn't confront Marla. Not yet. The old woman had taken her in, raised her, loved her. But the truth had cut deep. The betrayal wasn't in the lie, it was in the silence. Why hadn't Marla told her? Why had she kept the name hidden? Sarah left the loft, boots crunching softly against the gravel as she walked into the morning light. The town was stirring, early risers opening shop, a boy on a bicycle tossing newspapers, and further down, a group of construction workers hammering away at the edge of the stable grounds. Phase 1, the Tressington Equestrian Villas, the sign read. She stared at the silver T logo. And then she saw it, him. Gregory Tressington, surveying the land like a king measuring new territory. Sarah's fists clenched. Her vision narrowed. She felt her heart pound, the way it always did before she tried something reckless. But Valor blocked her path, gently nudging her shoulder with his muzzle. "Not yet," he seemed to say. Sarah turned back, but not before Gregory's assistant spotted her from across the gravel lot. He nudged Gregory. "That girl again," he said. "The one from yesterday. Something about her, she looks familiar." Gregory glanced at her. For a second, just a flash, his eyes flickered. Then he shrugged. "We're here for the land, not the locals." But that flicker hadn't gone unnoticed. Later that day, Sarah snuck into Marla's study. She found an old shoebox tucked beneath the floorboard. Inside were birth records. A hospital report. A DNA form that had never been mailed. And a photo. A woman, elegant and weary, holding a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. The woman's eyes were green, just like Sarah's. Scribbled on the back, "Sarah, 3 months old. She doesn't deserve to grow up with him." Sarah's hands trembled. She ran to Marla, holding up the picture. "Who is she?" she demanded. Marla sighed. "Her name was Natalie. She was your mother." "She died?" Sarah asked, heart in her throat. Marla hesitated. "Yes, but not in the way you think." Sarah stared. "What do you mean?" She tried to escape Gregory. He wanted her to terminate the pregnancy after the diagnosis. She refused. She ran, gave birth in secret, then came back thinking maybe he had changed. He hadn't. Sarah swallowed. So he threatened her. Isolated her. And when she died, they said it was an accident. But it wasn't. No. And I couldn't prove anything. Why didn't you go to the police? Marla turned away, her voice brittle. You think billionaires get arrested for being cruel? You think people like him don't own the system? Sarah's jaw tightened. But he doesn't own me, she said. That night, she made a plan. She borrowed Marla's old laptop, dug through online archives, traced old charity events, hospital financial statements, and land contracts. Everything pointed back to Gregory, his fingerprints were everywhere. She found emails leaked during an old lawsuit, including a chilling note. If the child is born broken, we contain the problem. Her stomach twisted. She stared at her own hands, shaking. She wasn't a problem. She wasn't broken. She was alive. Because a horse had defied logic, distance, and death. She looked at Valor, who had returned to the loft and now stood beneath the stars like a knight guarding an invisible kingdom. I'm going back there, she whispered. I'm going to make him see me. 2 weeks later, Gregory returned to the mountain town for a PR campaign. He was saving a rural community with a luxury eco-village. Media crews followed him like shadows. He gave interviews, handed out gift bags, and patted children on the head. Sarah applied for a local media internship. She wore her hair tied back, kept her name off the badge, and pretended not to exist. Until the live interview. She stepped into the frame beside the anchor, holding the cue cards. When Gregory saw her up close, he froze. It was her eyes. Natalie's eyes. His late wife's eyes. She smiled. Not kindly. Do you recognize me? She asked, softly, off mic. Gregory blinked. You're... She stepped closer, whispering just one word. Sarah. His face turned pale. His hands trembled. But he covered it quickly. Later, in the back of his black car, he slammed his fist against the door. She's supposed to be dead, he hissed. His assistant looked terrified. Gregory leaned back, wiping sweat from his brow. Find out everything. Who raised her, how she got here, what she wants. And if there's any record, any proof, make it disappear. But this time, the girl was ready. Sarah sent the DNA file to 3 independent labs under false names. She uploaded the documents to 3 cloud drives. And she wasn't alone. One night, she received a call from a reporter in the city. A woman who had once investigated Tressington but was blackballed before she could publish. I always suspected he had secrets, the woman said. You just gave them a face. They arranged a meeting. But Gregory found out. And this time, he didn't wait. Sarah was riding Valor in the woods behind the stable when the gunshot rang out. Not at her. At Valor. The bullet grazed his flank, but he didn't fall. He turned, hooves tearing through the dirt, and charged toward the shadow in the trees. A hired thug, sent by Gregory. But he hadn't expected the horse to fight back. Valor reared up, knocking the man to the ground, before bolting with Sarah through the forest, deeper into the unknown. They hid in an abandoned barn. Sarah wrapped Valor's wound. Her hands were steady now, not from courage, but from clarity. Gregory wasn't going to silence her. Not this time. What she didn't expect was the second twist. The reporter never showed. Instead, a man came alone, mid-30s, sharp jaw, designer coat. I'm Thomas, he said. Gregory's son. Sarah stared, stunned. I'm your half-brother. Sarah didn't speak for a long time. She stood frozen in the doorway of the barn, Valor behind her, blood dried on his flank. The man, Thomas, stood with his hands raised, not in threat, but surrender. I didn't come to hurt you, he said gently. I came because I believe you. Sarah narrowed her eyes. You don't even know what I'm saying. I know Gregory Tressington pushed a baby off a balcony 18 years ago. And I know that baby somehow survived. That baby is you. Her lips trembled. Why would you say that if it wasn't true? Because I saw it. What? Thomas exhaled, pain flashing across his face. I was 12. Home from boarding school. I saw him holding you over the balcony. I didn't understand at the time, thought he was just tired or angry. But then I heard him mutter something like, "You don't belong in this world." And then, he let go. Sarah stepped back. I ran out, but by the time I got downstairs, you were gone. No body. No screams. Just the staff, confused. He told everyone your mother had taken you and run off again. That's the last I heard of it. You never told anyone? I did. No one listened. I was a kid. And Gregory made sure the story fit his version of the truth. He always does. Sarah looked down. Why now? Because I saw your eyes on that broadcast. I recognized them. They're hers. Sarah's throat tightened. Natalie. Thomas nodded. She wasn't crazy, he added. He made her look unstable in the media. Like she was dangerous. But she was just scared. And kind. And brave. She died because of him. Yes, Thomas said softly. And now you've come back. Like a ghost he thought he buried. Sarah felt her legs weaken. She sat down on the edge of a hay bale. I didn't ask for this. But you're the only one who can finish it, Thomas said. They were quiet. Valor nuzzled against her shoulder, his breath warm and grounding. Help me, she finally whispered. I already am, Thomas replied. I've collected things. Emails. Contracts. I know how he hides money. I know what he's done to people. We can expose him. But we have to do it right. Sarah met his eyes. What do we do first? That night, Thomas took her to a mountain cabin, secluded, safe. He handed her a hard drive and a list of names. Former employees. Nannies. Secretaries. Some were afraid. Some were bitter. One was dying and ready to talk. A woman named Eleanor. She had been Natalie's personal nurse during the pregnancy. I saw everything, Eleanor said through the laptop screen. He forced her to sign documents under sedation. Trapped her. Monitored her phone. When she tried to escape with the baby, he found her. Did he kill her? Sarah asked. Eleanor hesitated. He didn't stab her or shoot her. But he called it in when she collapsed from a seizure and told the ambulance to take their time. She died on the way. To him, that was clean. Legal. Deniable. Sarah bit her lips so hard she tasted blood. Then came the second voice, an accountant. I kept the ledgers, the man said. I know where the offshore accounts are. And I know about the containment fund, set aside for legal silencing and private problems. How do you have this? Thomas asked. I copied everything before I quit. I knew one day, someone would come asking. Sarah looked at Thomas. Can we take this to the authorities? He shook his head. Not yet. Not until it's too big to bury. She nodded. It was time to go public. They began building the puzzle. Sarah wrote a letter. Not to Gregory, but to the world. She published it anonymously on a blog, attaching documents, photos, DNA results, and one haunting question. What do you do when your father tries to erase you? Within hours, it was viral. Within days, national news picked it up. But Gregory was faster than they thought. He called a press conference. Claimed he was the victim of a smear campaign. Accused online terrorists of hacking his past. Then came the lawsuit. Against Sarah. For defamation. He didn't name her directly. But the documents named an unnamed individual fraudulently claiming to be related to the Tressington estate. Sarah's hands shook as she read it. He was going to destroy her again. Thomas took her aside. He wants a fight. So let's give him one. On our terms. What do you mean? He grinned slightly. Let's show them what kind of man he really is. And so, they set the trap. Sarah, wearing a wire and hidden camera, confronted Gregory in his office at the development site, under the pretense of surrendering, accepting a payout in exchange for silence. Gregory laughed. You want money? Fine. That's all you people ever want. I want the truth, Sarah said, staring him down. He leaned in. Truth is what people believe. And they believe me. But they'll believe me too, she said. And then he snapped. You were a mistake, he shouted. You were born broken and I fixed it. I ended it. And you should have stayed gone. Silence. Then the small click of the hidden camera shutting off. Sarah stood, heart pounding. Thanks, Dad, she said. That's all I needed. She left the office without another word. That night, the video was uploaded. The audio synced. And Valor stood beside her as the world watched a billionaire destroy himself on tape. The media erupted. Old lawsuits resurfaced. The police reopened the case of Natalie's death. The press demanded answers. Gregory disappeared. Until the final twist came. He tried to flee the country, but was stopped at the private airport. By Thomas. I never wanted your money, Thomas told him, as security agents led him away. I just wanted my sister to be free. Back at the stable, the town threw a small celebration. Sarah sat by the pasture fence, watching Valor graze in the fading light. His wound had healed. But something deeper, something between them, had only grown stronger. She looked at Thomas, who stood beside her now. Do you think he'll ever understand what he did? She asked. No, Thomas said. But the world will. 3 months had passed since the world watched Gregory Tressington unravel in public. The trial hadn't started yet, his lawyers were buying time, but the damage had been done. Sponsors pulled out. Boards voted him out. Foundations removed his name from plaques. And for once, money couldn't fix it. But Sarah wasn't interested in headlines anymore. She was building something else. With Thomas's help, she transformed Marla's stable into a rescue and rehabilitation center, for both horses and humans. Survivors of trauma, abuse, neglect, those who had been silenced, just like her, were now finding peace in quiet rides and long walks through the mountain trails. The place was called Haven Ridge. Valor was its soul. His coat still glistened, his stride still powerful, but it was his calm presence that moved people the most. He had a way of standing beside the broken until they felt whole again. One afternoon, a young girl with burned scars on her face reached up to touch his muzzle. He's not afraid of me, she whispered. Because he knows what it's like to be seen as different, Sarah said. Despite the healing, there were days when the past still clawed at Sarah's heart. On one such day, she walked alone to the high ridge above the pasture, the same place from where Gregory had first tried to erase her life. She stood at the edge, the wind brushing against her face, and closed her eyes. Thomas joined her moments later, holding a small wooden box. I found this in his office, he said quietly. After the feds cleared it. I thought you should have it. Sarah took the box, opened it slowly. Inside was a photo. Her mother. Smiling, eyes bright, holding Sarah as a baby. There was also a letter. Unopened. Thomas frowned. I think she wrote this to you. And someone hid it before it could reach you. Sarah unfolded the note, her fingers trembling. My dearest Sarah. If you're reading this, it means the world didn't break you. It means you found your way through the shadows. Never believe you are less than whole. You are not a burden. You are not broken. You are a miracle. And you were born for something bigger than fear. Love without condition. Mom. The words shattered something inside her, and built something new in its place. She didn't cry. She just breathed. And for the first time in her life, it felt like she belonged to the earth, not to a man's legacy, not to pain, but to herself. 2 weeks later, Gregory Tressington was officially charged. Not only for fraud and obstruction, but for the suspicious death of his wife, and the attempted murder of his infant daughter. The media swarmed again. But Sarah refused interviews. She issued only one statement. This is not about revenge. This is about truth. I stand not as a victim, but as living proof that love, through strangers, through silence, through a horse that refused to give up, can defy even death. And for every child who was told they didn't belong, you do. You always have. Gregory sat behind bulletproof glass in the courtroom, dressed in gray. He looked old now. Stripped of power, stripped of applause. And when Sarah took the stand, poised, soft-spoken, unshaken, he didn't speak a word. She told the truth. Every piece. And then she turned to him, her voice calm. I forgive you, she said. Not for his sake. But for hers. Because her life was no longer chained to what he did. It was hers now. And it had just begun. 1 year later, Haven Ridge held a celebration. Dozens of kids, teens, and families gathered under the spring sky. They sang. They danced. They rode bareback through open meadows. The wind smelled like freedom. Valor stood in the center of it all, his mane braided with wildflowers, his eyes still gentle, still watching. Sarah walked among the guests, smiling. She didn't need to prove anything anymore. She simply needed to live. Sometimes, the deepest betrayals come not from strangers but from the ones meant to protect us. But healing doesn't always roar like thunder. Sometimes, it gallops in quietly on 4 legs, with a mane that catches the wind, and a heart that refuses to give up on you. To anyone who's ever felt discarded, forgotten, or unwanted. Your value isn't decided by your scars. Your story isn't over because of what someone else did. You're still here. So write the next chapter on your own terms. And let it be the most beautiful one yet. If you felt moved by Sarah's story, here are 2 books that may help you on your own journey. The Choice by Dr. Edith Eva Eger, a Holocaust survivor's powerful memoir on forgiveness, trauma, and reclaiming your life. Untamed by Glennon Doyle, a raw and liberating guide for women learning to trust themselves beyond fear and conditioning. If you believe in second chances, share this story. If you've been rescued by love, tell someone else they're worth saving. And if you're still waiting for your valor, don't give up. He's out there. 3 months had passed since the world watched Gregory Tressington unravel in public. The trial hadn't started yet as lawyers were buying time, but the damage had been done. Sponsors pulled out. Boards voted him out. Foundations removed his name from plaques. And for once, money couldn't fix it. But Sarah wasn't interested in headlines anymore.